Krista here with Little Salty Homesteader. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am in the kitchen talking about how I am preserving the harvest that I have gotten out of the garden so far this year. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can preserve food from your garden. The most common methods that you're going to see are going to be water bath canning, pressure canning, dehydrating, freeze drying, fermenting, and then just regular freezing. I don't have a freeze dryer yet, but it would be super cool if I did. But there's so many things that you can freeze dry, including entire meals that you would just reconstitute with hot water, and then you're just ready to eat at that point. That would be perfect for power outages or camping or traveling, taking something on the go, easy to reconstitute. The kids are really intrigued by the freeze-dried candy options like Skittles. Those look really cool. They kind of explode as they freeze dry. So like I said, I don't have that yet, so I'm not going to be discussing that as how I've preserved food so far. But one day, it would be cool if I had one. Pressure canning, I also don't have one of those yet, although I'm kind of feeling a little intimidated by the thought of it. The pressure canning whole under pressure situation kind of makes me a little nervous, but it is perfect for making most foods incredibly shelf stable. You can pressure can anything from meats to soups to chilies to sauces, fruits, vegetables, a lot of different things that you can put it in your pantry without needing to add acid. That way you have those quick easy meals on busy days, or you have your pie filling ready to go. It's incredibly versatile once you understand the basics of pressure canning. Water bath canning is another canning method to make food shelf stable, but it does require acid in the recipe. Most recipes are going to call for vinegar, lemon juice, or citric acid to incorporate that acid component. That way the food will become shelf stable without needing to add pressure to the canning method. Pickles, salsas, tomato sauces, and even canned tomatoes can be preserved this way. Another method, dehydrating, can be done multiple ways. You can use an electric dehydrator, like I have right there. You can air dry, like I have right here, or you can use your oven or microwave sometimes, depending on what it is that you are making. Anything from herbs to meat jerkies can be dehydrated, and several ground spices are made from dehydrated herbs, seeds, and vegetables. Example would be chili powder and paprika. Both of those are made from dehydrated peppers from your own garden. So it's an incredibly versatile way to preserve food. Put dry goods into your pantry that you won't have to purchase from the store, save money on spice blends, different types of things like that. Fermenting is the process of processing fruits and vegetables in a salt brine. The salt brine introduces and propels the growth of gut-healthy bacteria, making fermentation a nutritious way to preserve food. Popular foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, and even pickles all use fermentation to create that really tangy yet still crunchy flavor. Sourdough is actually a fermented bread and has been shown for people to be able to digest it a lot easier than your typical sandwich bread or other wheat breads. Kombucha is a fermented drink. Now that one, unlike preserving fruits and vegetables with the salt brine, kombucha, the bacteria actually feeds off of the sugars within like a tea. So that is just another way to get those gut healthy bacteria into your body. The last method, freezing, is probably the easiest and requires the least amount of equipment. It's stuff that you already have in your house, so you're not needing to get extra pieces of equipment in order to get food preserved. So simply blanching, bagging, and freezing vegetables helps preserve them for several months. In my freezer that's in the garage, I have green beans and then cored tomatoes that are frozen and just waiting for me to thaw them out and use them. And they have been there since last season whenever I canned them, and they're still good. So what I have here are foods that have been water bath canned, fermented, and dehydrated. So let's talk about the water bath canned stuff that I have done so far this season. It's not much, but it's something. Okay, so I have water bath canned 6 pints of, these are just water packed tomatoes. And I just opted for the most simple, basic type of tomato so that I could then turn it into whatever I wanted, whether that is chili, stew, curry, like a black bean soup. However, if I wanted to reduce them down for pasta sauce or pizza sauce or any of those other things, I figured it would be best to start with just the base of plain tomatoes rather than having a pantry full of something that I wouldn't use as much, like pizza sauce. I'm only going to use that for pizza. So like I said, I have 6 pints of those so far, but if you can see behind all of the jars and such, I have like 2 more big bowls of tomatoes that I need to start handling and probably processing some more. Now with water bath canning tomatoes, you do have to remove the seeds and the peels from the tomatoes, which can create quite a bit of waste. Now, unless you're saving the seeds for your future gardens, you're probably just gonna throw those away, throw them down your garbage disposal, but you do not have to throw away the peels. What you can actually do with the tomato peels is dehydrate them. I just used the electric dehydrator and it only took like 2 hours, and then I was able to grind up the peels into this tomato powder here. And I know it doesn't look like a whole lot, but what you can do with this is in turn turn it into tomato paste. So if you have a recipe that calls for 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, a lot of times you get a whole can, and then what are you gonna do with the can? Just refrigerate it until it molds? No, so it's a lot easier to just pull out, say, a tablespoon of this tomato powder, add a little bit of water to it, make it that pasty consistency, and then add that to your recipe. Saves you a little bit of money, you have a little bit less waste, and honestly, this is probably a little bit more flavorful anyway. The other thing that I have dehydrated this season is cherry tomatoes. Now there's a few things that you can do with cherry tomatoes in order to preserve them and be able to use them beyond just the summer growing season. My favorite thing to do with them though is just cut them in half and put them in the dehydrator. Now this does take a couple of days for them to get completely dehydrated, but then you'll just throw them in a jar. I need to get the oxygen absorber pack and just throw it in there. And then you just put it in your pantry and use it as you need it. Now the way that you would use this is if you have soups, chilies, sauces, anything that would require like canned tomatoes or any type of tomato, you could actually just throw those dehydrated cherry tomatoes in as the replacement. Once it hits moisture, they're gonna reconstitute and you're gonna add a lot of fantastic cherry tomato flavor to that dish. And then, you know, for free, because you're not having to buy stuff at the store. And you're gonna essentially be using the harvest that you worked so hard to get out of the garden. One other thing that I have dehydrated this year is actually still dehydrating. Right here, if you can hear it. This is the Lata Isleno peppers. If you guys have watched any of the garden update videos that I have done weekly, you'll know that those are the brown poblano type peppers. I'm testing those this year to see if we like the flavor of them. I've harvested several that are fully ripe, so I'm dehydrating them now, and I'm going to use those as my chili powder. I am also going to be harvesting fully ripe bell peppers, and then I have a Lesia pepper here that is starting to ripen, and I'm going to dehydrate, man, words are hard today. I'm going to dehydrate these, grind them up, and then use them as my paprika powder. For something like basil, oregano, chamomile here, and the peas, like the cow peas that you shell, I'm actually air drying these. Now this is a dehydrator tray that will stack onto this Nesco dehydrator, but it also has this like little kind of mesh type tray to keep the tiny things from falling through. So I have chamomile flowers on here that are air drying, and then some cowpeas that I have started harvesting and shelling. And once these are fully dry, then I will go ahead and place them into jars and put them into my spice cabinet. The chamomile is going to go up here in the spice cabinet where I keep the tea, and then the peas are going to go into the pantry where I keep the rest of my dried beans. So you don't have to have a special piece of equipment in order to dehydrate the stuff that comes out of your garden. You can use your oven on an incredibly low temp, like the lowest that you can possibly put it on, and dehydrate things that way. There are ways that you can dehydrate herbs in the microwave, but from my experience, the flavor isn't as great as just like air drying them. So that's something that you can play around with to figure out what you like the best and what works the best for you. And then for fermenting, I have a few things here that I have fermented. I have the salsa, and just remember the fermenting is essentially putting all these vegetables and or fruits in a salt brine, and then it introduces the lactobacillus bacteria, which I know everybody thinks bacteria and they think that that's a bad word, but in this case it's a good healthy bacteria. It helps with digestion and improves your overall gut health, which by the way is going to affect the rest of your body. So I'm trying to ferment some more stuff this year so that we can get our gut health back on track. Salsa was one of the experimental items, and it actually turned out really good. You basically take your same salsa ingredients and you put it in your jar, and you're gonna put a fermenting lid on it that looks like this. Actually, you'll put like a glass weight on the inside of the jar, and then you'll put the lid on, and you'll use this little air pump here to kind of draw out some of the air, and then you just let it sit in like a cool, darkish place for a few days. The salsa was 3 days, and then it was like tangy enough and it had a great flavor, so then it went into the refrigerator. These banana peppers, the mild ones took about 10 days, I think, and then the spicy ones are on day 5 now. So I'll probably try them later this afternoon, but I figure they're going to take about 10 days as well, and then they will go into the refrigerator. Once they're in the refrigerator, they will last several months. One of the other popular things that is a fermented item is called fire cider. It's something that is made during the cold and flu season. You kind of take it as like a wellness shot, and it's basically a bunch of fermented fruits and vegetables that have a lot of like vitamin C and healing things, ginger, jalapeno, oranges, garlic, honey, all these different things mixed together creates kind of like a potent, very strong brew. You take a little bit each day to kind of prep your body for the sicky season, help fight off all of the sickies. So that is something else that you can consider in your fermentation repertoire if you decide to go that route. Like I said, I have blanched and frozen green beans in my freezer out there. The tomatoes, all I did was cut an X on the bottom and then take the core out of the top, put them in a gallon bag, kind of lay them as flat as I could, and then pop them in the freezer. Whenever I need them for whatever it is that I'm going to use them for, I'll just pull them out of the freezer whenever they thaw. The skin is just gonna come right out along with any excess water that was in the tomatoes. So all I'm left with is just the tomato meat, essentially, and I'm ready to do whatever it is that I want to do with them. Salsa, pasta sauce, pizza sauce, any type of cooked preparation is probably going to be best for those, since it's going to pull out the skins and the excess water. So a lot of really easy ways to preserve your harvest as it's coming in. The canned tomatoes was the most time-consuming one because I don't have a food mill, so I had to physically chop all of the things and peel and do all the different steps by hand instead of just running it through a food mill and ending up with like a crushed tomato type thing. But let's talk about some of the equipment that you may need whenever you are preserving your pulling things apart. let's talk about some of the equipment that you may need whenever you are preserving some of your harvest. So for freezing, all you're gonna need is a big stock pot, some water, some ice, and then whatever you're going to freeze that item in. I personally use Ziploc baggies because I can store them flat and they take up the least amount of room. If you have a vacuum sealer, definitely go that route. It's going to take up even less room. There are ways outlined in this book that will show you how to freeze them in jars or in like ice cube trays, or a bunch of different ways to freeze them to take up a lot or a little bit of room depending on what it is that you're trying to do. But I mean, for the most part, you already have all of the equipment that you need in order to freeze your food for preservation. If you're going to dehydrate your food, if you don't have any equipment like that, like the electric dehydrator there, you have your oven, you have your microwave, and then you can air dry things. In the fall, whenever I'm cutting down all of the basil at the end of the season before the first frost comes, or I'm just sick of just dealing with the basil at that point, I will just bundle it up and hang it over my dining room window and just let it air dry up there. You can do that with any of your herbs, honestly. I wouldn't recommend it for vegetables though, because I tried to do it like stringing up a string of ripened peppers and they all molded. So for the non-herb things, you're gonna need something with some power. So whether that's a gas-powered oven, electric oven, a microwave, or a dehydrator, that's going to be your best bet for your fruits and vegetables on up to your meats to dehydrate things like jerky. This is just a Nesco American Harvest dehydrator. I think I got it for like $59 on Amazon. I did get some additional trays because I had lofty goals of dehydrating all the things all at once, which doesn't always work out. So I am able to dehydrate as little as I need to, or as much as I need to, depending on how much I need to get going at one time. I'll take care of that, okay? For water back canning, you are going to need a really large stock pot. Now this one that I have here, this is just the pot that came with my set of stainless steel pots and pans. It works great for 6 or 7 jars at a time, which is all that I'm able to do with what I'm harvesting at this point anyway, so I don't need anything bigger yet. If you have a bigger garden or a more abundant harvest, you are bringing in 15 quarts worth of stuff at a time, invest in a bigger stock pot. This one is 28 cups. So what is that? 7 quarts. You can get them all the way up to like 26 quarts. They're huge, they're massive, and then you can can until you're sick of looking at jars. And then you'll also need something to put in the bottom of the pot to keep the jars from rattling around and banging against each other. I got this little contraption at Walmart. This is just a little silicone jar thing. It just goes in the bottom of the pot. It goes in the bottom of the pot, and then the jars just sit on top of it, and they don't move because it's silicone, so it creates like a nice grippy surface for them. And you will also need jars, of course, and you will need lids and rings. Now, this is like the standard size lid and ring, and then there's also the wide mouth. I have both. I prefer the wide mouth for the quart size, just because I also drink my water out of the quart size jars and it's easier to drink out of, but just use what you can find. Now, once you do seal a jar with these caps, you will need to replace them. These are one-time use only. So once you pop that seal and you're ready to reuse that jar after you've used the item out of it, you'll need to replace this part, but you don't have to replace this part. So just something to keep in mind because it is a consumable. And then, well, what has also come in handy for me with water bath canning is this funnel. And this funnel is perfectly designed to fit into jars, whether that is the traditional size jar or the wide mouth jar. This fits in both perfectly well, and it allows you to put all of your food items in without making a big mess in your kitchen, because whenever you're canning, you're already making a big enough mess. You don't want to spill the food that you've worked so hard to preserve. The other thing that has come in really in handy is this grabby contraption. It's a grabby contraption. It will help you pick up those jars out of the really hot water so that you don't burn yourself, so that you can get it out of the pot, hopefully without knocking things over, and onto a towel to dry and cool down and finish sealing and all of those things. I got all of these different accessories, including the silicone jar thing, I don't know what it's called, at Walmart in the canning section. I don't think they were too expensive. You can probably get them on Amazon as well, but I do think that all three of these will definitely help your canning process go a lot smoother, without you having to figure out how to do things without making a mess, without burning yourself, and without the jars slamming into each other. So definitely all mega important items. Now for fermenting, there is some special equipment that is necessary for fermenting. So let me just grab those really quick. So let me show you the glass weight that I was talking about. I'm sure that there's other items that you can use, but this is what was recommended to me when I started. So this is what I'm going to recommend to you because it works great. So this is the glass fermenting weight. So after you put your items in the jar and you cover it with the salt brine, you will place this weight on the top of it. It's going to press the food items down so that they're fully submerged in the brine solution. You don't want any of them like hanging out and like introducing bad bacteria. So these work really great. I got these on Amazon. And then the other thing that you're going to need is the fermenting lid. I'm not gonna say this is 100% required. I think that you can probably get away with something like cheesecloth, or you can just use your regular lids and then just, release the gas manually every day. This just has like a small valve in it so that the gas will be released on its own. And it's really handy because you can set, it has the days of the month on here. So if you know that you're gonna set something into the pantry for 2 weeks, you can set the date for 2 weeks from today. I don't even know what today is, the 17th. So I would set it for the 1st if I was doing a 2-week fermentation. So it's there on the 1st, and then whenever I'm in there checking on different things, I can pull out the stuff that's ready for the 1st, give it a sample, see if it's ready, and then move it into the fridge. This is the, I don't know what it's called. What is it called? Oxygen extractor. Okay, so this is the oxygen extractor that just pops right onto this lid like this, and then you just pump it like, it's like pumping air into the tire, but instead you're pumping air out of the tire. So you're removing the oxygen from inside the jar, and it's going to create a really tight seal on your jar. So keep that in mind whenever you're putting this on. You don't want to screw this so tight that once you remove the oxygen, it creates a permanent seal, because I almost did that the other day and I had to have Jake open the jar for me. And yeah, I felt like a little weakling after that. But both of these items are great to have for fermenting. And then of course you need your vessel that you are fermenting in. There are special fermentation crocks that you can get, or you can just use jars like I have used. I also have half-gallon jars. That's what I'll be using whenever I make kimchi later in the fall, hopefully. And it's also important to know how to close boxes. Oh yeah, so that's what I'll be using, the half-gallon size. They're up there at the very top of that cabinet. I'll be using the half-gallon size whenever I make kimchi and sauerkraut later this fall. If I get a huge run of peppers, then I will ferment in the half-gallon size instead of just the quart size. and then I will just divvy them up into smaller jars that will fit better into the fridge whenever it's time to move them over. So one last thing that I want to talk about in terms of preserving your harvest is some different resources that you can turn to whenever you're trying to figure out different recipes. What is the proper amount of salt for the proper amount of water? How much citric acid do I need? How much vinegar do I need? Whatever it is that you're preserving. I have a few books that have been incredibly helpful and have given a fantastic foundation and helped me to safely and successfully preserve food for my family. So the first one is, this is the Ball Home Preserving. Let me tell you the correct title. The Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. So this one is going to have water bath and pressure canning recipes within it. I used this book to can the tomatoes. I followed the recipe exactly. I did not deviate because I am not trying to give my family botulism or salmonella or anything else that's disgusting and harmful. It has anything in here from barbecue sauce to pie filling to salsa to pickles to just plain canned tomatoes, tomato sauce. So this is definitely a good book to have in your arsenal as far as food preservation, homesteading, cooking. It's just all around useful for any of those. Another book that has been incredibly helpful is this fermented vegetables book. It goes behind the science of fermentation, gives a far better job of explaining what fermenting is than I did. It's going to give you different brine solutions to make anything from pickles to fermented cherry tomatoes to different types of coleslaws for your tacos, or it has a ton of different things in here. Just find something baba ganoush, a fermented recipe for baba ganoush. I've never had a fermented baba ganoush, but it might be worth exploring if my eggplant starts running out of my ears, which hopefully it will. And then the last book that I have as a resource is the Freeze Fresh book. Now this is going to break down how to freeze different vegetables and different fruits, including purees and pie fillings. Anything from English peas to spinach, just whatever it is that you may want to freeze and put up for later use. I may turn to this one for okra, but I think I'm going to be dehydrating any remaining okra that I have. Obviously, the internet is going to have 100 million ways to do anything that I've talked about within this video. Make sure that the recipe that you decide on, you either understand the science behind how that recipe was created, so you know if it's safe or not, or you use one that has been tested and confirmed as safe, so that you know, you're doing your diligence to make sure you and your family remain safe. But that is all I have for you. I am excited because I actually have food preserved this year after last year and the rats eating everything. I'm really happy that I got to bring some in and put some back and be able to use it in the future. But that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you did like this video and you want to see more content, maybe perhaps on how to actually preserve some of this stuff, please like, subscribe, comment, do all those different YouTube things. It greatly helps my channel. But until next time, go find a way to get those garden manicures. Bye.